In this video we're going to see how to use conditional if statements within macros. We've seen in previous videos how when we submit code to SAS, it gets scanned by the word scanner to recognize macro tokens, and that when these tokens are resolved, you basically enter a cycle until which point you no longer have macro tokens and the code you have is just compiled. Now you could just use normal if statements in the same way and wait for a particular statement to resolve, or there might be reasons why it's desirable to directly check your macro variables before they resolve. And if that's the case, instead of using an if statement, you just use a percentage if, and instead of a then statement, you'd use a percentage then, and instead of an else statement, you'd use a percentage else. So we'll just take a quick look at an example here, using a familiar macro that we've used a few times now, called so percentage macro, and we're going to call the macro shopping. It's going to have two positional macro variables, spend and trips. And in this macro, I leave a space there, you don't need to. We're going to create a data set, jjj underscore after shopping, and then keep name old savings, new savings, and the semicolon. And now I'm going to set mat008.jjj, which we've used this data set many times before. And here we go. I want to check the sign of spend. So if spend is negative, and that's the thing, spend is a macro variable because ampersand spend, I have to check this condition with percentage if. So now percentage then percentage put, careful, the spend is negative. So this percentage put doesn't have to necessarily be percentage put. It's got nothing to do with this if statement, but it just means put to the log this particular statement. And percentage else, percentage put, the spend is positive. And I'll just do what we had previously. Old savings equals savings in pounds, new savings equals savings in pounds, minus trips multiplied by spend. Run, and percentage macro end. So I can submit that to the to SAS, so that's gone through. So now, if we remember how things work, when I submit the following statements, percentage shopping, say 500 spent twice, if I submit this code, this will get picked up by the word scanner, and the word scanner will recognize the percentage sign and say, I have a token, which will send it to the macro compiler. Then percentage shopping, because of what we've input previously, will resolve to these lines of code here, these 7 lines of code here. And those 7 lines of code will get sent to the word scanner. The word scanner will pick up yet more tokens and will realize, these need to be sent to the macro compiler. The macro compiler will then try and resolve as many of these as it can. And first of all, it will realize that it has an if statement here, but as a macro if statement. And so that macro if statement can be resolved because everything here can be checked. So percentage if spend is negative, in this case spend is going to be positive, so it's not going to do this, it's just going to go straight here and resolve this. And that's one of the statements it resolves whilst it's in the macro compiler. What happens then is the rest of the code gets sent to the word scanner, and that'll be these first 2 lines and these last 3. These 2 lines, to some extent, no longer exist within the word scanner. And so SAS checks these 2 lines and these 3 lines and realizes that we've got everything. Oh yes, because these probably would have been resolved in the previous trip. and that just gets sent to the data step compiler. So if I run that, we see these little messages come up. The spend is positive, which is indeed. If I check my library, there we go. That's more or less what we expect. So if I change that, let's just change that to say minus 30. So I went shopping and made £30, or $30, 30 euros. We see careful, the spend is negative, is being output, and more importantly, the data set has also been created. So those are very, very simple usages. We've only just put things to the log as results of our if statements. We can do things with much more complicated things. We can do much more complicated things, such as create new variables, do particular procedures, depending on the value of a macro variable. But we'll see that in future videos when we'll use percentage if statements in line with percentage do statements.